More than half of women over 60 experience vaginal dryness, yet fewer than 1 in 10 ever mention it to their doctor. Not because it doesn't bother them, but because they believe it's something they just have to accept, something they should stay silent about. Part of aging. But that silence, it can slowly reshape your life. It makes you hesitate when you sit down. It makes you wince at certain fabrics. It makes you avoid touch, even from someone you love. And here's the truth. Vaginal dryness after menopause isn't just a nuisance. It's a physical condition, real, measurable, and completely treatable. You don't have to live with that discomfort. You don't have to settle for less comfort, less closeness, or less of yourself. If you've ever felt this quiet kind of pain, the kind you can't quite explain but that lingers, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not broken. And there are gentle, proven ways to feel at home in your body again. After menopause, estrogen drops significantly. That drop doesn't just affect fertility, it affects tissue. It makes the vaginal lining thinner, drier, less elastic, and slower to respond to stimulation. The body, which once kept itself moist and soft naturally, now needs a little help. This condition has a clinical name, genitourinary syndrome of menopause, but most women have never heard it. They just know something has changed. Their skin feels different. Their sleep is disrupted by itching or irritation. Intimacy becomes complicated, not because of emotion, but because of biology. Dr. Lisa Larkin, a leading women's health specialist at the University of Cincinnati, explains, "We routinely see postmenopausal women reporting burning, recurrent urinary tract infections, and decreased quality of life, all linked to untreated vaginal atrophy. And yet so many women suffer in silence because they think it's their fault, because they feel embarrassed, because no one told them this was coming." I once spoke to Madeline, a 72-year-old retired teacher in Montreal. She said, "I always thought of myself as strong and independent, but after I turned 65, I began to feel off. I couldn't put it into words at first. There was dryness, yes, but also a dull ache. I didn't even think to bring it up at my physical." It wasn't until her doctor noticed inflammation during a routine check that she learned what was really happening. It wasn't psychological. It wasn't imagined. It was her tissue responding to years of declining estrogen and lack of targeted care. And the moment she realized it could be improved, that's when her posture changed. That's when her confidence came back. Not because she reversed time, but because she finally understood what her body needed. This dryness is not about age. It's about hormones, about circulation, about tissue health, and most importantly, about the small daily choices that can either soothe or worsen the condition without us even realizing it. You see, many of the things we do after 60, from what we eat to how we bathe to how we sit and move, they can then quietly dry us out even further. But the good news is those same routines can be shifted to restore softness, moisture, and ease. It doesn't require hormone therapy for everyone. It doesn't require invasive treatment. Sometimes it starts with hydration, with nourishment, with giving attention to areas we were taught to ignore. And that's what we'll explore together in this video. Not in a cold clinical list, but through real stories, practical shifts, and science-backed insights you can actually use. Because your body hasn't stopped working. It's still listening, still healing, still capable of feeling if you learn how to meet it where it is now. And the best part, these changes are gentle, sustainable. They meet you with the same grace you've offered others for years. Now it's your turn. Are you ready to feel good again? Not just in your heart, but in your skin? Let's begin. I want to tell you about June. She's 69, widowed, lives alone in a quiet home near Edmonton, keeps the kettle on most mornings, knits when her hands allow, and swears by her morning routine: tea, toast, and a hot shower. Simple, familiar, comforting. But over the last year, something shifted. She started feeling an uncomfortable tug when she sat too long, a dryness that didn't go away after a bath. In fact, some days it felt worse. She told me it wasn't painful at first, just like a tightness, like something wasn't breathing. She began using over-the-counter moisturizers, thinking it was her skin, but the discomfort stayed. And more than once, she canceled plans because sitting for coffee or taking a short walk just didn't feel easy anymore. When she finally brought it up quietly during a follow-up with her doctor, she was surprised by what she heard. It wasn't a reaction to a lotion. It wasn't dryness on her arms or legs. It was vaginal atrophy, exacerbated by two things she did every morning: hot water and soap. You see, most women are taught that warm baths are soothing, and they are, for muscles, for stress. But when it comes to the vulvar and vaginal area after 60, prolonged heat and soap can strip away the delicate oils and alter the natural pH, making dryness worse. The vulvar skin is different, thinner, more absorbent, especially after menopause, when estrogen no longer protects it with the same natural lubrication. In June's case, her hot showers, where she used scented soap and scrubbed out of habit, were quietly worsening the very discomfort she was trying to soothe. Her doctor, a urologist specializing in women's pelvic health, recommended a few subtle shifts: switching to lukewarm water, using only a pH-balanced, unscented cleanser designed for sensitive tissues, and avoiding direct scrubbing in that area altogether. Within 2 weeks, the itching lessened. By the end of the month, her walking became comfortable again. No pills, no treatments, just awareness, and a little kindness to a part of her body she had never been taught to protect. She later told me, "I used to treat that part of myself like an afterthought, but now I realize it's skin too. It deserves softness." If this is the first time you've heard that overly hot water can worsen dryness after menopause, leave a comment. You're not alone. So many women don't know because no one ever told them, and that's the quiet tragedy of it. We are taught to care for our skin, our face, our joints, but no one tells us that after 60, the skin that needs the most protection is often the most neglected. Science backs this up. A 2021 study published in Climacteric, the Journal of the International Menopause Society, found that women who maintained pH-friendly vulvar hygiene routines experienced significantly lower levels of atrophic discomfort and inflammation. And here's what's more telling. Those who continued to use regular body soap in intimate areas saw a 30% higher recurrence of irritation, even when using moisturizers. So the takeaway isn't complicated. You don't need expensive products. You need to stop doing the things that quietly strip away the natural defense your skin is still trying to hold on to. Because when tissue is already thinning from hormonal shifts, even small daily habits can tip the balance. And the good news is, those habits can be gently reversed. June's story is not rare. In fact, every woman I've spoken to who's faced this challenge has said the same thing. I wish I had known sooner. But knowing now is enough. Because the tissue that feels dry, it's not dead, it's alive. It's waiting for circulation, for hydration, for care. And that brings us to another quiet influence on dryness, what you put inside your body. Because while we often think of dryness as external, it begins on the inside. Would you believe me if I told you that one of the most common beverages women over 60 enjoy in the evening is silently contributing to nighttime dryness, urinary irritation, and restless sleep? That's what we'll explore next through the story of a woman whose nightly ritual unknowingly robbed her of both comfort and connection. Let's continue. Marion is 74, lives in Victoria, just a few minutes from the water. She's kind, thoughtful, still sends handwritten letters to her nieces every holiday, and every evening after dinner she sits by the window with her favorite drink, a warm cup of black tea. She's been doing that for years. To her, it's a ritual, a comfort, a way to wind down before bed. But lately that comfort had a cost. She began waking up at night, not just once, but multiple times. She felt dry, unsettled, irritated in places she didn't want to talk about. She tried new sheets, changed her detergent. Still, the dryness persisted. She didn't associate it with her evening tea. Why would she? It wasn't spicy, it wasn't acidic, it was just tea. But when she mentioned the symptoms during a pelvic floor physiotherapy session, one she had finally agreed to try after much hesitation, the therapist asked a simple question. What do you drink in the evening? And when Marion answered, the therapist paused, then gently said, caffeine is a diuretic. It doesn't just make you urinate more, it also dehydrates mucous membranes, especially in postmenopausal women. That was the first time Marion ever connected her tea to her tissue. You see, after menopause, the mucosal lining in the vaginal and urethral area becomes thinner, less resilient. Hydration, both from water and the body's internal systems, becomes more important than ever. And caffeine, even in moderate amounts, pulls fluid away from those delicate tissues, not only drying them out, but also irritating the bladder, increasing nighttime urgency, and making the whole region feel raw and overworked. In Marion's case, her evening tea was creating a quiet loop. Mild dehydration, increased vaginal dryness, nighttime irritation, disrupted sleep, fatigue, even more reliance on tea the next day. Her doctor explained that while one cup of tea isn't dangerous, for some women, especially those sensitive to caffeine or with already thinned tissues, even a small habit can quietly amplify discomfort. The suggestion wasn't drastic. She didn't have to give up the ritual, just reframe it. She swapped her black tea for a caffeine-free herbal infusion with marshmallow root and licorice, two botanicals known for their natural mucilage properties, which help coat and soothe mucous membranes. She added one extra glass of water in the late afternoon, and she stopped drinking anything an hour before bed. 3 weeks later, Marion reported that the burning sensation had eased, her nighttime awakenings had dropped to once. And, most importantly, she stopped dreading bedtime. She told me, I never thought something so small could make that much of a difference. I didn't need a medication. I just needed someone to connect the dots for me. If you've been sipping your nightly tea or coffee out of habit and wondering why you feel drier or more irritated as the night goes on, you might not need to eliminate the ritual, but it may be time to change what's in the cup. And again, this isn't just anecdotal. In a clinical review published in Menopause, the Journal of the North American Menopause Society, researchers found that fluid intake patterns, especially caffeine consumption, had a direct correlation with increased genitourinary symptoms in women over 60, including dryness, frequency, and urgency. What this tells us is simple, but powerful. The things we consume regularly, even the ones that feel harmless or traditional, maybe shaping our experience of comfort in ways we don't realize until someone helps us see. So no, your body isn't betraying you. It's simply responding to the inputs you give it. And when you shift those inputs, even slightly, you may be surprised by how quickly things soften, return, recover. Marion kept her evening window. She still watches the water as the sun sets, but now her cup is filled with something that supports her body, not stresses it. That's the beauty of later life. You get to rewrite the rules, one habit at a time. In the next part of our journey, I'll share the story of a woman who rediscovered intimacy without hormones just by changing one thing about her morning movement routine. Because dryness doesn't only respond to creams or pills, it responds to circulation, to warmth, to life. Let's keep going. Helen didn't think of herself as someone who needed help. She had gone through life taking care of others, her children, her late husband, her mother when she was ill. She knew how to manage things. She always had. So when her body began to feel unfamiliar, when intimacy became painful and simple daily movements became less comfortable, she brushed it off. It's just age, she'd say. I'll adjust. But sometimes it isn't about adjusting. Sometimes it's about paying attention to what your body is trying to tell you. It wasn't until she was alone one quiet afternoon, sorting through old letters in a cedar box, that it all caught up with her. One letter, written by her younger self to her husband in the early days of their marriage, was full of warmth and playful affection. She read her own words and her eyes welled up. I used to be someone who felt, she whispered. When did that stop? That moment became a turning point. Not because the symptoms were worse, but because she realized she'd been silently disappearing behind them. She wasn't sleeping well, and not because she was restless, but because every time she moved, the discomfort reminded her she didn't feel like herself anymore. She wasn't laughing the same way. The little sparks that used to make her cheeks glow, the subtle flirts, the joyful ease of connection, it had all dulled. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She scheduled a visit, not just with her family doctor, but with a women's health specialist. And there, for the first time, someone looked her in the eye and said, "You're not broken. You're not dry because you're old. You're because your body is adjusting, and there are ways to support it." That validation alone felt like rain after drought. The specialist explained how hormonal shifts, especially the drop in estrogen, directly impact moisture levels in the vaginal walls and surrounding tissues. Without enough estrogen, the mucosal lining becomes thinner and less elastic. The nerves become more sensitive. Blood flow decreases. This is why many women begin to experience not just dryness, but discomfort with walking, sitting, even sleeping. But she also explained something else. There are treatments that are safe, evidence-based, and they work. Helen learned about topical estrogen, not systemic, but local, the kind absorbed only in the area where it's needed. She learned that according to the North American Menopause Society, low-dose vaginal estrogen therapy is considered safe and effective for most women, even those well into their 70s and beyond. And for those who can't or don't want to use hormones, there are plant-based moisturizers, hyaluronic acid suppositories, and lifestyle changes that support hydration from the inside out. Helen left that clinic not just with a prescription, but with a permission to feel again, to reclaim what had quietly slipped away. That night, she stood by her bedroom mirror and looked at herself, really looked, not with judgment, but with gentleness. She wasn't chasing youth. She was coming home to her present self. And from that night on, she began to feel something that had been missing for years: hope. If you've ever had a moment like this, a quiet turning point that made you see yourself differently, share it in the comments. You never know who else it might help. There's something quietly powerful about remembering who you are, not who you were in your 20s, not who the world says you should be at 70, but who you are now. Helen's story isn't just hers. It echoes in the quiet discomfort so many women silently carry. It lingers in the drawer full of unused moisturizers. But you're not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. Your body has changed. Yes, dryness happens. So does stiffness. So do restless nights. But none of those things mean the end of vitality. They just mean the beginning of a new kind of care. Maybe you're like Helen. Maybe you've tucked this part of your life into a quiet corner, thinking it wasn't important anymore. That maybe your time for intimacy, or even just ease and comfort in your own skin, had passed. But the truth is, it hasn't. Your body still listens. It still heals when given the right support. Your skin, your tissues, your energy, they're still responsive, still alive. So tonight, if you find yourself staring at the ceiling again or feeling like you're living a little less brightly than you used to, remember Helen. If this video spoke to something in you, even quietly, leave a comment below. You can just say, "I understand, Helen," or share a piece of your own story. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Elderly Seasons. You're not invisible. You're not too late. Thank you for listening.